When I made a list of lots that I wanted to do some spot building on, meaning that I'm just constructing some lots and building some lots that are necessary to run in the game, one of the ones that came to mind was the graveyard. And it's one that was almost forgotten, if I'm going to be completely honest, but thankfully I had a list of where I'm placing different lots and such. And so today we are going to finally construct the place in my SimCity world here where we manage the dead. Now, for those of you that are just joining my channel and just kind of getting to know my little corner of the internet, my name is Michael, and I want to welcome you to Sovereign Gaming in Life Sims, the YouTube channel where I build worlds, lots, and also share my thoughts on video games in the life-lit simulation gaming space. I kind of flubbed that intro a little bit, but it's okay. I'm just going to keep it in. I've never claimed to be a perfect YouTuber anyways, so I can give myself some forgiveness there. It's actually kind of funny because at the time I'm recording this episode, you guys will get this at a much later time, but at the time that I'm recording this episode, I literally just got back from vacationing in Texas just the other day. So I'm a little rough around the edges when it comes to actually recording audio, but hopefully I'll just kind of pick things up, just kind of like riding a bike and all that. So that's the hope anyways. But yeah, today we are going to be tackling the graveyard build in my SimCity world here, and I'm very excited to actually bring it to you because I kind of had to let the lot sort of speak to me in a way, which kind of makes it sound a lot more ominous than it actually is, but I actually really just never used any true references for it, except for when I get to building the actual chapel that's just going to sit on the lot here, and I'll explain more about that vision as we get to it. When I set out to do the graveyard here, originally I knew that I only wanted a couple of elements. I just wasn't too sure how to go about creating a lot of them. Like I mentioned earlier, I knew that I wanted a chapel or a church in there, but I also wanted a bridge as well that just kind of goes over some water, and I also needed to somehow fit in the actual rabbit hole building that goes along with the graveyard here. So it all has to kind of look like it matches. And that was kind of a difficult little a little thing to do actually, just because all of the graveyard rabbit holes they varied in style a lot, and I just felt like I wasn't able to kind of get the color correct when it came to translating from the rabbit hole into the chapel. I actually ended up just deciding that because the bridge was going to be such a strong focal point of this lot here, that I would just allow the bridge to just kind of act as that iconic border, so to speak, between the architectural style of the chapel and just how it leads into more of the actual like graveyard themes that would support any of the graveyard rabbit holes. So that was really the big idea there that I ended up going with. And the reason why I decided to actually add in a chapel here was because I did see a couple of graveyard builds out there. I was just doing some very light research because at the time I really just didn't know what else I wanted besides the bridge. But I was really researching different kinds of graveyard builds, and I came across one obviously that had a church in it, and I liked the idea of that. And unfortunately, like, one of the things with The Sims 3 is that you can't host parties at the graveyard. And because it is a Sims 3, like, you can have different party types, and one of those party types is a funeral. So what that means is that you can't host a funeral at the graveyard, which in my opinion would make sense, but you know, it's just one of those gameplay limitations that I'm having to contend with. So I wanted to add in the chapel in here because it would make sense to absolutely have some sort of a graveyard groundskeeping area where they would also host funerals and all that. And there's usually like religious undertones in certain graveyards, and so I really wanted to actually have that emulated in this build here. And so I decided to just kind of go with the chapel look. I like the architectural style of the reference that I was using for the chapel, and it was definitely something that I wanted to represent in a really light way, as it would serve as more of a place for people to really come to mourn their loved ones and all that, rather than a place of worship, if that makes any sense. It might not make any sense, so I do apologize if it isn't. But yeah, technically the graveyard is located just on the northeastern corner of Bluewater Village, which is the suburb that lies just outside of SimCity. So it's got all kinds of views of the city skyline, just sitting east from it, and it also has some views of the ocean as well. I always intended this particular lot to be the graveyard because of those views and because of its proximity to both like the inner city and also the suburbs and the rural areas as well. So
I didn't realize it at the time, but when I was thinking about the design of this lot, the three leading design elements being the chapel, the bridge, and the mausoleum rabbit hole really lent itself well together. And just by the placement alone, it really helped me as the person building out this lot decide where I wanted everything to go. In one corner of the lot, I have the chapel building, and then in the middle, between them, I have the bridge, which literally and figuratively bridges one theme to the other. And then on the other side of that bridge, of course, is the mausoleum rabbit hole building that we know from The Sims 3. And yeah, I really liked how it just kind of serendipitously worked out in that kind of a way. It wasn't something that I had anticipated or really planned on doing. It just kind of happened by accident for me. So I was really happy with the way that it all turned out. The thing with The Sims 3 and how it handles death, and how EA has really talked about death in general in The Sims games, is that they've really talked about it in satirical tones, and I really did enjoy that. And it would feel wrong if I did not also adopt those satirical and whimsical tones and attitude towards death that EA and Maxis has really fostered since The Sims 1, to be quite frank with you. But I also really wanted to convey more serious and somber undertones to death as well, and to just try to make it a little more realistic than what the Sims teams have done over the years and over the decades. And that's really why the chapel was so important and so crucial to this build, is that it just kind of helps to convey that. It helps to convey those somber tones for those players that really want to give their Sims that experience of, maybe having a funeral and all meeting together at the graveyard there just to remember the person the Sim that had died. Now, the problem with The Sims 3, though, is that you can't host funerals at the graveyard, which kind of sucks, but I believe you might be able to if you use some cheats and using like the NROS mods and all that. So there's a way to do it, and I figured that for those players that enjoyed using those mods and don't mind just kind of that don't mind going the extra mile to deliver that experience for their Sims, that at least with this graveyard lot, they would have a place to host that funeral procession in, which is why I ended up giving it a podium and also some pedestals as well for players to actually place the urn of the departed Sim somewhere. It also doesn't help that I was actually attending a real funeral at the time that I had decided to build this lot, and so I really kind of wanted to, in a way, show that experience here as well, which kind of sounds like cathartic or whatever, but I feel like funerals are very important for providing closure to people, and even though like we can't host a funeral party at the graveyard, I at least wanted to make that option available for players that really wanted their Sims to go through those somber undertakings and all that. So I really wanted to make sure that there was a place to do it respectfully. If a Simmer really didn't feel like their departed Sim needed to be treated with like the whimsical and fun tones that the EA franchise has really explored with the with death in their games. And again, I'm not trying to say that that's wrong for them to do, but I just kind of wanted to give the option for players to really have both, the best of both worlds, essentially. So yeah, that was my vision there. When it comes to the chapel, obviously I'm just kind of working from where I know with the chapel and all that, but I decided to try my best to avoid any kind of outright religious symbolism or anything of the sort. It's one of those things where I kind of wanted to emulate the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, Turkey, which was a building, and you might have to correct me here if I'm wrong, but it's a building that used to be a mosque, then it was turned into a cathedral, and now it's been turned into a museum where it celebrates artwork from both the Islam and Christian faiths, which I think is pretty beautiful in of itself. And so that's kind of that was sort of something that I took from inspiration here, so that's why I really avoided any kind of outright religious symbolism and all that. It just helps to keep the players comfortable with working with this lot, and I just kind of felt that that was the case. Of course, I could have made the building a lot more modern or anything different for the architecture, but I really like the look of the chapel that I ended up constructing here, and I also wanted to break up the architectural style a little bit as well, seeing as how this was going to be a pretty predominant lot within the Bluewater Village, a suburban neighborhood. So yeah, that was a little bit of the thought process behind there, and plus, like, I get to add in some more realistic elements into the chapel as well, being that there obviously needs to be a parking lot for when you have people having funerals at the graveyard and whatnot. And so yeah, those university parked cars really comes in handy for building out parking lots. I used to build out parking lots just using empty parking spaces, and the NPCs and townies would fill up those parking spaces, and it would just be a disaster because it would fill up the game with all kinds of abandoned cars and whatnot, which is kind of stupid, but it is what it is. But yeah, there's one parking spot there for your Sims to park at if they need to. If not, the ever old faithful car in the pocket mechanic is certainly available for your Sims as well. So yeah, that was, you know, I got the privilege of this of building out the graveyard to really explore both like some more somber themes, and also to build off of the whimsical and fun themes that EA has developed regarding death over the years. This is a bit of an opinion of mine, and you know, I'm open to being completely wrong here and just blaming this as more of a user error, but I really don't feel like EA equips us to build for older eras quite well. Like, I really struggle to find windows and doors that would sort of match like the medieval times. Like, in my head, this chapel would have existed well before Bluewater Village was even a thing, and you know, it would have existed around the time that Old Town would have been founded in SimCity and whatnot. So it would have existed since the beginning, and so I was really struggling to find wallpapers, windows, and doors that would try to reflect that age-old time, or like reflect a more medieval inspiration. I had a lot of struggles with that with the library build, especially because trying to find like stone wallpaper for it was just like pulling teeth, and I'm still not happy with the way that Central Station Library looks on the outside, just with its color. And a lot of that is just really due to the set of wallpapers that I really had to use. So I'm trying to figure out some sort of a way to edit that episode, who knows. I might actually experiment with doing some sort of a live stream on that one there, but I have a lot more work to do before I can actually officially promise that, so who knows if that'll be a live stream episode, or if it'll be something that I just do an editing episode of at a later time. But anyways, I'm kind of getting beside myself. I just wanted to complain that the medieval choices are just really not paramount here. I know it's really going to bite me again when I do more medieval builds, because I've, off the top of my head, I know that I want to make the Goth Mansion build something that is more medieval inspired. And I'll share those inspirations with you guys at a much later time because I'm nowhere near close to building the Goth Mansion. But yeah, the Goth Mansion, as the last name suggests, and as one of the founding families of SimCity, it suggests that, you know, Gothic architecture and a more medieval style build is certainly in the cards for whenever I get around to doing that. So yeah, I'm both kind of dreading it only because of the limited choices that I have here, but I also just, you know, I've done it once before and the build turned out okay, and doing it again, I'm just sort of not excited for the limited choices I'll have. And one thing that kind of bothers me is that when I was doing those medieval builds, even with the Central Station Library for the government campus, is that the windows definitely don't match the era or the time period that I really wanted to emulate from. Like, I'll go and do some research and I'll pick out some inspirations and references that I want to use, but when trying to find the exact windows or doors, it's just like really not there. On one hand, that's exactly why custom content exists, and I guess that's why the Sims 3 store exists as well. But on the other hand, it's a very niche set of objects and windows and doors that it just might not even ever be possible for me to find. But yeah, and I also don't like downloading outside of the Sims 3 store as well. I'm very paranoid when it comes to actually downloading custom content for the Sims 3, since in the past, like, I've had custom content really break my game and stuff like that. And yeah, I barely play with any mods. If anything, I do the NROS mods for just like a couple of things here and there, but I really don't play with a whole lot of mods in the game itself, and that includes like the custom content. I mean, even like custom objects and stuff is something that I really limit myself to. And yeah, even the chandelier download from Mod The Sims, which is probably like the safest website you can ever download from for The Sims, was a bit of a stretch for me, but I really wanted those chandeliers so bad, and I knew that I would have multiple opportunities to use it, so I just decided to bite the bullet on that one. But yeah, the medieval selection was just something that was really not apparent here, and I guess like if The Sims Medieval ever like released downloadable content of its, you know, that offshoot game, right? If it ever released its own object pack or game pack or whatnot, it would definitely be something I would be interested in. But back in the day, like when I was originally playing The Sims 3 and The Sims 2, like medieval builds were never really my thing to begin with. So this is kind of new territory for me now that I'm coming back to it and looking to represent a specific era within a build. And that era has been represented multiple times, whether it's the festival grounds in Old Town or Central Station Library in the government campus. And now here we are with another medieval inspired build when it comes to the chapel. In fact, like, again, this just might be me not finding the right wallpapers in the game. So again, feel free to pipe in if there is a particular wallpaper that you use that you feel represents like medieval and older builds properly. But yeah, the wallpapers is a huge one for me when trying to emulate a medieval style build. Like, I just won't find the right ones. Specifically, I think that the stonework is very hard to come by in a way that actually tries to represent the medieval era a little more better. You might even see it in here, or actually, yes, you'll see it in here, but you'll see me use the create a style tool to just try to like sift through the different rocks, the different masonry options for the different patterns and stuff. And I just really wasn't finding a whole lot when it came to those, and I ended up just kind of keeping the chapel as a wooden chapel. Most of the medieval architecture is in the architecture itself, not in the actual wallpaper, which is kind of unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. I would have loved if this was a stone church, but I settled for something that was more wooden, and I still think that it turned out okay. Another thing that like I don't think is done well, like, or is represented enough for medieval architecture is actually like the different railings and the floors as well. So it's just like those elements plus doors and windows Maybe I just need to search the Sims 3 store a little more in depth before attempting these builds, but I was really struggling to find the right floors, the right wallpapers, the right windows, doors, everything for this build. And yeah, there's only a few options for the stained glass, and I used those options where I possibly could. But yeah, it was, I did struggle a little bit with the chapel here, and the chapel does take up the majority of the build, because I was just really struggling to get the look and feel the way that I wanted to exactly, while also being conscientious of making sure it was represented as neutrally as possible and more as a space that Sims can actually gather in and congregate in to celebrate somebody's life and to mourn someone, or sorry, to mourn a Sim that has passed on. So yeah, that was, there was a lot of probably unreasonable pressure that I put on myself for this. So I hope you guys enjoy the way that the chapel turned out. I actually do like the roofing on it, and I also like the general form that it took. Although it's just kind of something that bothers me a lot, is just like when looking at the specific windows and floors and walls, I know personally that it's not historically accurate, and again, I'm not like really a stickler for historical accuracy because there are so many different styles within the medieval era in of itself, but you know, just kind of having those options would have been nice in this case. Like I said, when I go to do the Goth Manor, that'll be another thing that'll just kind of have to that'll have to work with as a challenge, doing that mansion build whenever I come to it. And that again is something that is way in the far future at this point for this channel. But yeah, I do end up liking the chapel in of itself, especially the form that it took, but also the interior was something that I felt that I did a good job on as well. So I'm just going to give myself a little pat on the back there as well. The driveway and the parking lot was another very important part of this build. Like I mentioned earlier, I just really wanted to add in a dose of realism as to what kind of facilities one would expect when they come to a graveyard. And I decided to give in a chapel. I decided to throw in a chapel, I should say. And I decided to kind of avoid like any other like medical examiner offices, because I've seen builds where people have done phenomenal jobs with adding in like an undertaker's office and stuff like that, but I wanted to avoid that. I just wanted to make this graveyard more like a meeting place, and also as you'll see later on, some flirtations with some of the fun themes that EA has had with death, and how they have really built up that kind of lore that death is an actual person per se. I mean, the Grim Reaper exists as an NPC for a reason, and he's really, you know, revered by the community as as someone that's, I don't know, kind of hard to explain, but yeah, he's revered by the community as someone who is there to just kind of mess up your game, and he's not taken too seriously is really what I'm trying to say here. And so yeah, I do explore those themes a little later on as well. Speaking of which, the parking lot also helps to border off the chapels, so it kind of gives players and myself really a sense that the chapel themes end at a certain point in the lot. And that's something that really goes a long way when you're designing anything, really, is that if you add borders to something, it helps to give a sense of completion. I think I've talked about this before, but the parking lot really helped to add in that border, or at least to signal to us that the chapel area is kind of ending in a way. I hope I'm explaining that correctly here. I haven't exactly been, I haven't really felt that I've been very eloquent this episode, but I'm going to carry on anyways. Like I mentioned, at the time I'm recording this episode, I have literally just gotten back from a vacation, and I am just really, I thought about it the entire time I was away on vacation, what I wanted to say, and now here I am just kind of stumbling over my own words. So I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me here. Okay, so I think you guys would have noticed this in several of my builds, but I really don't like a lot of the metal patterns that are used in this game as the default EA pattern. So you'll see me switch it over into some like rustic blacks or something. And the reason why I really don't like a lot of the metals, like with the shinier surface, is that it always reflects and it always looks like it's some sort of a weird teal blue. And that's something that I really didn't want to have. I'd rather have something that really conveys that it is black at all times of day, as opposed to having it like reflect some sort of a weird teal blue, even though I've placed the color wheel, or set the color wheel for it to be like as black as can be. So that was one thing that I needed to change with the gates here. And again, like the fence and the gates was something that I really used to help me signal that we are transitioning into a different area where we're going to, get into the fun, whimsical themes around death as opposed to the more serious chapel. And yeah, so I changed that a lot. Like I've changed it in the past, and I think I've even like saved it in several instances. But yeah, I wanted the taller gates and also that specific gate structure there, taller fences and also taller gates, just to give it really that sense of, that presence that I wanted it to have. It's so funny because like when it comes to EA and how they've handled death within the Sims series, it is both like, it's both whimsically done, and it's also very like, it's a big deal as well at the same time, and that completely makes sense. But I wanted the fence and the gates to really reflect that too, and so yeah, I used them in a way that I felt was appropriate for the lot. And also, if I remember correctly, there is a description on the gate that just kind of mentions that it's some sort of a graveyard gate. So again, because it is something that EA has put into the game, it is something that I would like to play with as well, just out of respect for all of the death lore that has gone into The Sims 3 and really the Sims franchise in of itself. And yes, I do end up finding the Grim Reaper statue, so you can bet that I will eventually get that placed as well. But anyways, that's enough about gates and fences. The bridge here that you are seeing on screen was another huge piece of infrastructure that really helped to, change the serious undertones of death into that EA whimsical, spookier themes that we are so accustomed to as players and as lifelong players, essentially. So that bridge really helped to, figuratively and literally bridge us into a different theme and into like a different mood with this lot. And I was very happy with the way that the bridge turned out. In fact, I find bridges very easy to create. In the festival grounds lot in Old Town, there were 4 bridges that I created, and they were arched bridges as well. And this time around, I really wanted to make this bridge in the SimCity graveyard something a little more grander, a little more iconic than those other little bridges that I made in the festival grounds. So I definitely decided to expand it in terms of width and the amount of space that it would cover, and to really just make it that centerpiece that the lot so deserved. Despite all the complaints that I really have about the lack of medieval objects and wallpapers and floors, I actually feel like the bridge turned out beautifully, and in fact it is indeed my favorite part of this lot build in of itself. And what's interesting about this bridge is I actually decided to try something new with it. So I know we are going pretty fast here. It's at 400% in terms of speed because this is a speed build after all, you guys. But I decided to place some lights on those bridges. And what I really wanted to emulate there is I really wanted to have like a really like sort of creepy mint green glow from those lights, as opposed to like the standard cyan, or how you can change the colors of the lights and all that. And there is a way to do that in the the game. And if you, after putting in like testing sheets enable true and all that, you can shift click on those lights and you can actually put in a custom color. And that custom color is just kind of reflective of the different like red, green, and blue values that you get. So it's not like a hex code, it's actually like red, green, and blue values that you have to put in, separate each of them by a comma. It is actually pretty simple to just kind of input in there, and it's something that just like goes be above and beyond, really. If I'm going to be honest, I would never expect to customize the different lights that glow from any kind of a light fixture, and so here I am actually doing that in The Sims 3, which was a game made about 15 years ago, mind you. But however, how effective it is remains to be seen in a way. I really wanted like a creepy mint green glow to it, and when I put in the figures, I could tell that it worked, but it was very faint, and that was something that I was just not overly thrilled with, but you know, I was able to do it, and I actually ended up keeping it in here as well. When we get to the end of the video, when I show you guys the tours and stuff, like look out for that mint green glow coming from the lights that are on the bridge here, and just let me know if you guys are actually noticing a difference in it or not. Personally, I'm not, but that's just me. That's really just me not noticing a difference, but I do know it is working because there is a little bit of a shadow that you can tell like when you change the color of it. And I, like with all of my lots, I have play tested it, so I've even played it at night and stuff, and it does actually glow that mint green setting that I had. It's just something that like I probably have to play with the color a little more in terms of the custom color, and it might be something that I address in some sort of an editing episode coming up. But seeing as how this is a spot build, it was something that I felt was appropriate for what I wanted it to look as. So I was kind of happy with the way that it ended. If you remember the Drake Demise statue from the Old Town Fire Station build, it is making a re-entry here, and it's again like a really creepy statue, and I wanted to really symbolize with the bridge that when you cross that bridge, it is essentially like you're going into a completely new area with a new feel and all of that on the other side of the graveyard. And so I placed those statues in on either end, just kind of heading up the bridge there. Now, something that I didn't realize I was doing with this build is, and unfortunately I don't have any camera footage of it, but I did put in a bunch of spawners for the water in the bridge, and that of course included the deathfish spawner. So don't worry, people, you are going to be getting your deathfish when you go to download this lot, which will be made available shortly after I make the SimCity world available. But yeah, with the spawners, I just kind of wanted to make a little mention here that I placed in some fishing spawners so that you can actually fish from. And one thing that I was kind of thinking about while building this lot is actually doing another spot build for a fishing spot community lot so that your Sims had a place to fish. However, the graveyard actually doubles as that function here because you can still fish from the bridge or from the little pond that's underneath the bridge and by the creek and all of that. So it's not like you can't fish in the game, and I've also got some spawners scattered throughout the world outside of lots as well. So there are opportunities to actually fish for those of you that enjoy fishing gameplay, but it's really highlighted again in the graveyard as well. So you can get like common fish and some uncommon fish as well, if I remember correctly. And yeah, that is certainly something that has that surprised me pleasantly, is just the fact that you can get all kinds of fish here just playing on the graveyard. And that was something that, you know, when it comes to those spawners, like I have a very elementary understanding of them. Like I know that there are different types of spawners in the debug mode, but I don't know exactly what kinds of fish are included in the spawners, because you'll see like it's common 1, common 2, and common 3 for like different fishing spawners, but it doesn't actually list the actual fish in there if I remember correctly. I might have to just double check that the next time I'm in my game. But yeah, that was something that adds just like an additional function to the graveyard, is that if you have an angler sim and if you've downloaded my world and you're just waiting for other lots to be created, including a fishing spot, of which there will be several, this is something that can actually hold them off until then. If they don't want to like go into the ocean to try and locate some fishing spots there. So that's some good news there. Something else new that I really wanted to try with this lot was creating a cellar door or a Bilco door, if I have done my research properly. It's just essentially like a sloping door that gives you access to the basement. And I really wanted that for a couple of reasons, and you're going to see why in just a minute here. The first reason is that I wanted to give like some sort of a groundskeeper's like office that he would, well, not really an office, but like a storage room that he would get into, and he would have access to all of his soils and stuff and fertilizers, I suppose. And the reason why that's important is because graveyards across the world are really well kept grounds, generally speaking, and they're actually like, there are plenty of graveyards in the world that are actually double as really nice parks in some certain aspects. Like you can walk through a graveyard if it is open to the public and whatnot. And I definitely wanted to make that kind of story told here, but I also wanted to continue playing off of those whimsical themes that EA has really had with the theme of death. And I wanted to continue that theme by building out a basement that leads into like the groundskeeper's little storage area, but then like there's a couple of secret doors that eventually leads you up to Death's Door itself. There was an a lot that was released with the Sims 3 store, and you can actually knock on Death's Door and challenge him to like a guitar match and everything to get like a resurrection or something of the sort. And you know, it is one of those like funny, whimsical stories that EA continues to build upon with death and how they handle like death and making the Grim Reaper an actual person and all that. So yeah, it was something fun that I wanted to include in this build in a very small way. Like I didn't expand the lead up to like Death's Door too much. I just kind of ended up placing a cursed sarcophagus across from it, just in case people want to have like just in case people want to turn one of their Sims into a mummy. So that kind of gameplay is certainly available for those that enjoy that kind of occult gameplay. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to make it more of a smaller portion here, as opposed to really getting too silly with it. And you know, with EA releasing a whole lot that has you place like the Grim Reaper's house, and you can knock on his door and everything and like chat with the dude and stuff, it's just like the object is there, the lore is there, and I kind of feel like while building a world that is supposed to emulate the lore of The Sims, that I'm just kind of, I don't want to say like my hand is forced, but the option is certainly strongly suggested by EA themselves. And so I'm actually taking them up on that option. And I feel like the gameplay of that lot was pretty okay as well. Like it's not something that I normally really play with, but I can see where people would really enjoy it. And, you know, by it being one of those supernatural elements and one of those occult things, you really have to look to try and discover it. Speaking of which, I did consider making this into a tomb. There is a way to do that with the World Adventures expansion pack, and I have done some tomb builds in the past. But the problem with tomb builds is that when you discover a room and switch to another household, it is essentially like rediscovered. So it's kind of unfortunate in that like retrospect that it doesn't reset each time you change to a different household, and it wasn't really gameplay that I wanted to include here anyways. I just wanted it to be a very quick and easy series of secret rooms that you can gain access to, but using that bookshelf. And yeah, you can knock on Death's Door yourself if you just venture into the basement and past the groundkeeper's lot and all that. So yeah, just some fun gameplay there that I thought that you guys would enjoy. As for how the actual cellar door or Bilco door turned out. I thought it was okay. I thought it was passable to say the very least. Like, you can't actually do slanted doors. And I feel like there are examples out there where people have actually been able to successfully do those. So, you know, I should probably have watched those videos before taking a stab at it myself. So, you know, shame on me for not doing that. In all honesty, the biggest challenge when building out this little secret basement component to it all was getting the layout of the basement to look correctly. Like, I wanted the stairs that descend down into the hallway that leads to Death's Door to look a certain way. I wanted a very specific layout to all of that. So it was all something that I struggled a little bit with while using the basement tool. However, I'm very thankful that the basement tool exists and that you can actually build multiple levels of basements. So you can have like a really deep basement that goes like 3 or 4 floors down, which is pretty great for The Sims 3 in the time that this was built. So I was very, you know, it's always a game that continues to amaze me for the time that it was built in. And yeah, I was really excited for that, and that was really the biggest challenge when doing this part of the build. However, looking forward, and you know, I'm just gonna move on from talking about it because you'll just kind of see it all come together towards the end here with Death's Door and whatnot. But yeah, looking forward with the rest of the Sims series, I do have a couple of more spot builds to make before I would consider like the first batch of lots ready to release to the public for when the SimCity world is ready for download. And some of those lots really include some stuff that I admittedly forgot about. When I was building this graveyard, I thought this was going to be my last spot build, but then I suddenly realized that I kind of need a movie theater. So I need to get that lot built in here. Now, I'm not trying to like necessarily fit in all the rabbit holes, because if I did that, I would be really I think I got most of them, if I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. But if I'm trying to like build out all of the community lots, we would be here forever, and there would be no such thing as like spot building and whatnot. But the next spot build that I am absolutely putting on the radar here is the movie theater. I was doing some play testing with the graveyard, and I suddenly realized, oh, it would be kind of nice if Sims had a movie theater upon release of the world. So that is something that is absolutely on the on the to-do list. But after the movie theater, I think I'm going to be pretty much finishing up the rest of the spot builds, and then I'll just move back into developing neighborhoods and all of that. The other spot builds that I feel are necessary are going to be some starter homes. So within that Bridgeview neighborhood, of which you guys voted and named. So great job on that. Bridgeview is perfect for that little neighborhood. You've got Bridgeview there, Pleasant View in the hills, Bluewater Village in between. Like, it all kind of sounds like it all flows, which is kind of nice. And yeah, so I wanted to build just like a couple of starter homes. Like, I'm thinking an apartment block and just like a single family home as well, or 2. I might actually do 2 of those single family homes, but I'm, you know, now that I'm saying it out loud, I think I just want to do the 1 plus the apartment block, so that there's at least a couple of options for you guys to choose from when starting up the world and downloading all the lots, that you got at least a starter home to really select from. And with those starter homes, I do plan on with the apartment one, that one's going to be very easy for me to make under 20,000 simoleons, but for the single family home, that one might be a little more of a challenge, because I did actually choose the lot sizes based on the single family home style that I wanted to build on there. So I technically have like the skeleton of what I want, and the skeleton in of itself is more than 20,000 simoleons. So yeah, there's that. It's like, is it a starter home or is it really not? And in this case, it's kind of not. But I'm gonna build it anyways for y'all. And it's gonna come with a basement. And when it comes to like single family homes and any house build or any build that I do, I always like to fully furnish them. So that's all gonna be there. I'll just be more conscious about choosing some of the cheaper furniture to put in there, and just like working with the creative style and the color wheel and all of that. I mean, with the creative world, or sorry, with the creative style tool and with the color wheel, there's just really endless possibilities. And you know, I just kind of feel like the onus is on me to just kind of make do with tools that are seemingly limitless. I mean, the Sims 4 could never with the creative style tool. And yeah, it's something that I look forward to doing, and I'm very excited to do. Actually, like, I can't wait to actually get back into building out the neighborhoods, because I feel like there are just so many pockets of missing things, and it's just all starting to bug me now. So, but yeah, next on the list is absolutely going to be the movie theater, and I've got some interesting things that I want to experiment with that. It might end up in just like wasted footage that I do, but I'll do it anyways, and I'll just kind of play it by ear and see how it forms from there. I'm going to be finishing up this episode with just placing in some vegetation. I usually like to leave the landscaping and vegetation for last in a lot of my builds, unless of course I'm just feeling inspired in the moment. And this time it was the case where I just wanted to leave it for last. Unfortunately, you won't see me place any of the fishing spawners or any of the bug spawners or any spawners of any kind, because I totally forgot to film that. However, I did go back to this lot and I've already added in those spawners already, including some fog emitters as well. So you guys can certainly expect that when the time comes to actually download this lot, that it will come with fog emitters and all. So, and like I mentioned before, this graveyard lot really doubles as a great fishing spot for Sims that don't have access to boats to, you know, go out in the ocean and all of that. So I'm very excited for that as well. I'm very happy with the way that it unintentionally doubled as a fishing spot, because I really didn't want to do a fishing spot as one of my spot builds that I was doing. So I'm really glad it worked out. That'll be another speed build episode at a much later time. But anyways, what's up next? Like I mentioned earlier, we are going to continue with the spot building. I've just got the movie theater next, and then I think some of those starter homes that I mentioned earlier. If something else just kind of pops up, just yeah, I will correct myself in a future video. and yeah, we'll just kind of take it from there. Of course, if there is something that you think that I missed, feel free to leave a comment. If there's something I've overlooked, just leave that comment there. I read all of my comments. I'm new around here in the YouTube world, so I am reading and responding to all of you guys, and I honestly just genuinely enjoy it too, so there's always that. Anyways, I am just going to take another minute here to say thank you for watching and for enjoying this series. And if you've enjoyed what you've watched, and if you've been following along with the SimCity build series, then feel free to like this video and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Anyways, thank you so much, and I hope you have yourself a wonderful day.